Hey there.
Abe, how you doing?
Good, good. It's so nice to see you again, Jimmy. We
Yeah.
had the pleasure of speaking right before the show started, and then I found you on the red carpet for We Crashed, and we talked a little bit about that show and this show, and
Yeah.
now we have a season three coming, which is very, very exciting news.
Listen, come on, that's such great news. I mean, hearing that before we had already gotten through like season two was just amazing. And yeah, we're just really excited and proud of the work that we've already done, but just can't wait to get into the storylines for season three.
I always figured that, a two-season pickup meant that that was supposed to be like the whole arc of the show. And especially knowing that there's so much more that can happen, it's great that we're not just confined to that and that as everybody else finishes season two, they'll be eagerly awaiting what's coming after that.
Exactly, exactly. I think, I still watch the original Abe. So, and I recently watched an episode where they went away for Christmas and they sort of they got robbed and like even watching this episode, I'm just thinking there's so much we could do, with our show. We could take the whole Banks family to like to Jamaica or Africa, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. There's more to be developed in between, I think, Jeffrey and Philip Banks's relationship, as well as so much more for, I think, Aunt Viv and her sisters, bringing them into it. So I'm just really excited to see where we can go for season three.
Before we get too much into Jeffrey specifically, I did enjoy the family reunion episode where we got to see how Jeffrey knows what to prepare and specifically how he wanted to make sure he was taking care of Viv, just knowing the intensity that was going to happen. What was it like filming with such a large cast of guest stars all, on the main set?
It was crazy. It was crazy. It was huge. You saw how many people that were in the episode. But you know what happened? All the other sort of cast members and the extras, like they brought the same energy. So it really did feel like a family cookout day. We shot it over quite a few number of days, but the biggest thing is working with Anna and I think it's Anna Horsfield and Bill Bellamy. Like their expertise, their skill, but also their energy. I mean, Bellamy's one-liners, they had us in stitches. We were in tears of laughter while the camera was rolling and when the camera had stopped. And also obviously working with someone like Anna, I'm a big, huge fan of all her work, but especially like stuff like Friday and stuff like that. And so it was a nice moment where we was able to work with some legends, and as well as share this beautiful moment where we had the whole cast together as well as, the Banks family.
There was reason to be concerned at the end of season one that Jeffrey might not be coming back, even, which obviously didn't seem like a real possibility given the history of this show. But there was definitely a lot of friction, with him and Phil. How have you, sort of worked on that relationship and portraying it on screen?
Yeah, you know what I where we left it at the end of season one, I felt like we left it at a really spicy, interesting point because I think both men felt they were right. I think Jeffrey's a man of his word. Where we are even now in season two, the triggering point is basically Will needing to see his father. That triggered Jeffrey, made Jeffrey think about his family and his responsibilities and his choices that he's made in his life. And that thread has actually continued all the way from I think it was like episode 8 or 9, 8 I think of season one, and so to portray that, I sort of used, I suppose we're going to talk about the documentary later, but there's some of that, with my biological father, we had an on and off relationship. So I used some of that for my portrayal of how Jeffrey was handling it. But also, I also wanted to allow Jeffrey to show that he's not perfect. Do you know what I mean? That he has made mistakes and it's okay to own up to those mistakes, It's okay to open up and be vulnerable. That's very, I think the whole of season one, that was very important for us for the show, just to show vulnerability, especially within the men, within the black men of the show. And I think also not to paint him as a, I don't know, like as a, I wouldn't say a villain, but uh, there can be sometimes a stereotype about men and black men and their kids and I think what was great is that eventually we got to hear and see a bit why Jeffrey's in the situation that he is, you know what I mean, or why he doesn't have his son around. And I really enjoyed sort of playing the nuance of that not giving too much away, but also not having Jeffrey look like a guy that just, I suppose, gave up on his son.
And I do want to talk about that documentary, but my first question is this just a coincidence that this has to do with your character and you have some experience, or have you spoken, did you speak with Morgan or anyone else involved with the show to sort of incorporate more of this into the story?
You know what, Abe? It's all a coincidence. I call it God's business, because I was working on this documentary from 2020, and it's been in my mind for before that, for another 5 years before that. So it was edited and wrapped before I sort of, we got into Bel-Air. But when I spoke to sort of Carla and Morgan, they always thought about what they were going to do with Jeffrey's son, and they had thoughts about sort of adoption and fostering, and then while they were already looking into doing that, I shared my documentary with them. I did a little private screening. And so it was that weird thing, was that this is crazy. This is so, like, the alignment is so beautiful. But within the documentary, I also talk about, I didn't realize Bel-Air is based off of Benny Medina's life. And Benny Medina was adopted by a white American family. And so watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when I was at home in the UK growing up as a kid, I realized I've been watching a version of myself. So even that alignment, and now I'm in the show playing Jeffrey, and I'm going through a similar storyline. I just think it's really beautiful, and I think it's what I love about our show. We do pay attention to the detail of the storylines from the original, the nods. So Frederick was in the original Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but also we're taking ownership of doing something different with it, and I love that Jeffrey gets to talk about why he's not with his son, and the issues, and how he finds it difficult not being with his son, which brings us back to the end of season one. He got fired for Will, but really it wasn't just about Will. It was about his love, you know what I mean, his love for his son, and he's maybe a bit of his guilt.
You've already stressed that you felt this related for you, and the original show to what you went through. Do you think that your documentary will hit differently for American audiences because it's about the system in the UK?
You know what, I think it will hit slightly differently, but at the same time, no, because it's a universal story, you know. And that was one of the main reasons why, as a executive producer of my documentary, I pushed hard to get US distribution. So I think it will hit in a different way, because there's a lot of difference. Even some of the terminology and the language that we use in the UK is different. I think it's much more expensive here. So there's a whole issue about that, in terms of, if there are families looking to change young people's lives, some of them can't do it because of how expensive you're making it out here in the US. But I also think, you know what, it's been nice. I've had a lot of messages already, and some people I've got back to me, and they've talked about being inspired to foster or to adopt. And you don't make anything. I made it actually thinking, if one person can be inspired in some way, that would be amazing. But the amount of messages I've had from different kinds of people, from the person that says, right, I want to look into adoption or fostering, or from the person that's, Jimmy, I've been through something similar and I needed to see this. And when I made it, Abe, I made it for multiple reasons. One, I'd lost like half my family during the pandemic, but two, I really wanted to raise awareness about fostering adoption, because I feel like the narrative's always been negative, and the stats are the stats, but they're not my stats. And I think there are other inspiring stories like mine out there. But I feel like if you've always been shown the negative narrative, then if you're coming from care, how can you have that sense of self to be like, I can be beyond how my life started? I feel that's very difficult. And I said to myself, when I look back in my life, I've rarely seen a positive care story, you know? And again, bring it back to Bel-Air and my documentary. I feel Bel-Air is one of the biggest care stories in the world, but a lot of people don't know the DNA of that story. And I think, especially within the Black community, there's something in that we always do, sort of taking a cousin or a friend from a family that's within the community. So I wanted in my film, in a nuanced way, just address that there are Black families fostering, that it's not just the kind of thing, you know what I mean? It is nuance. Love is important, but education about culture, not being isolated in like suburban areas is really important. And I just feel like through my story, Lenny James's story, and Chris Akibusi's story, we cover all the different elements.
Yeah. I'm also a big fan of Doom Patrol, so I was familiar with Javon Wade, and I was happy to see him. I think I had read before that he was English, because otherwise I would have been quite shocked, because he has a very good American accent on Doom
Yeah.
Patrol. What was it like working with him? And did you, did everything come from the script, or was anything, brought in from your personal experiences in the way you interacted?
Javan's been a big friend of mine for years, and we've got to spend more time together out here in the US than we have in the UK. But when there was the casting, we did talk again about the detail. He had to be a Brit, a true Brit, and Javan seemed to be available, and then the rest was history. But we did tweak there's little words and little isms here and there that me and Javan talked about, going like, it's important that America understands what we're saying, what not, but it really is, it's even more important for it to be authentic to the UK audience, and we really worked on that. There was some ad libs that we put in before the first scene while I was eating a dinner, about sort of football and soccer, the different use of the words to describe soccer, because we say football in the UK and football is NFL here. So we played around with stuff like that, but also it was just effortless in terms of the way that we connected. I think we had a shorthand because we knew each other. He's an amazing actor. And I think having that shorthand and the understanding, we talked about the story of him being a young kid growing up in London. He understood what Frederick would be going through. So we was able to really rely on our own knowledge and our own experience coming from the UK, and allow that to be sort of in the bedrock of the scenes. That last scene before when he says he's going to catch an early flight, like there's so much sort of pain and hurt between both people, and it was that thing like, you're good, I'm good, let's just leave it at that. But then the weight of that, the sadness was so beautiful. And I think we were lucky to have Javan, and I hope we get him back for season 3.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to everyone getting a chance to see season 3 and to watch Handle with Care, coming soon to Peacock. It was great again to see you, Jimmy, and good luck in the future.
Thank you so much, Abe. Thank you. Really appreciate seeing you again and having me on the show. And yeah, I hope everybody enjoys Handle with Care. It's actually on Peacock now, actually. So enjoy.
Fantastic.
All
Awesome. Well,
right.
thanks again, Jimmy. Take care.
Cheers, Abe. Thanks so much. Cheers.